So there are many ways for you to get a Mark Halpern fix. His two-way conversations are immensely and appropriately very popular online. His Wide World of News newsletter, which I subscribe to and enjoy every day, and here in the second hour of the program each and every Wednesday. Today in the Wide World of News, Mark Halpern begins this way. We are at an odd moment in the three-side relationship between the Trump agenda, the establishment reaction to the Trump agenda, and the dominant media coverage of the Trump agenda. We can divide every element of that agenda into one of two buckets: big casino or not big casino. This is Mark Halpern. Mark, expand on that. Tell me what makes a matter big casino as compared to not big casino.
Yeah. Thank you for having me back. Look, there's some big things, right? The reconciliation bill that'll affect Americans' taxes and energy and the border. There's these attempts to make peace deals with Iran and Ukraine and Russia, Middle East. There's the major project of cutting the government through DOGE. Then there are these other things which have undergirding them important principles, and they're extremely compelling stories. But I don't think they're big casino. I don't think in the long run they'll matter as much to the real lives of real people. The deportation of this gentleman who came to this country legally and lived in Maryland. The question of whether Harvard will keep its federal funding. The tariffs are also a big casino, I should add. And yet the press and the Democrats get caught up in these other issues in a way that I really think works to Donald Trump's benefit. And it's not fair, because Donald Trump is playing by different rules than others. And I can understand why the press and the Democrats are concerned about issues that strike them as important to highlight. But I can't help but feel that this is part of the advantage Trump has gained by taking on so many fights. And that brings to him, as I write this morning, a number of benefits that are asymmetrical to him that the Democrats can't match. So it's a real puzzle. If you oppose Donald Trump, how do you deal with these fights, which are in the long run probably not as significant to the American people, on which in some cases Democrats are on the wrong side of public opinion, while at the same time not feeling like they're giving Trump a free pass? It's a very, very complicated issue for those who oppose Donald Trump to try to address.
So I have a theory on this, and I think we're in agreement that he wins the not big casino matters usually. Is that fair?
Yeah. That's fair. And he chooses them because he thinks he's going to win them, because he thinks the public opinion's on his side and that he's got the better tactics to win those.
So you'll appreciate this. I was at a dinner last week in Manhattan, as a matter of fact, with a small group of people, very intellectual, very bright, very political. And they were having a conversation as to the political merit of what Trump is trying to do on tariff policy. And taking a page out of what Mark Halpern has just said, I responded, when it came to me to speak, I responded with a discussion of showerhead pressure. Because, good, it gets a laugh out of Mark Halpern. Because, of course, that was one of his not big casino matters last week, like plastic straws, like Harry having his hands full with Meghan, like that weird NFL kickoff rule where, Mark, he has a gift, a populist gift to raise the sort of things that are fun fodder, Seinfeld-ish, Larry David-ish. And I think, to your point, he builds political capital by identifying them.
Yeah, and look, you identified, I think, a subset of what I would say is NBC, not big casino. These things that are maybe even more removed from the significance of the debate over tariff policy or the debate over taxes. But there's no doubt that they have a lot of relevance to the American people. And you wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of the straw issue or the showerhead issue. The other sub-bucket within the not big casino bucket are things like beating up law firms, beating up Harvard, right? Beating up people who've come to the country legally, rhetorically. These things are serious issues, and more serious than a straw. There's constitutional questions, there's philosophical, there's moral, there's policy questions. But again, in the end, they are to some extent a way Trump is allowed to change the subject when he wants to, rev up his base, and distract Democrats who are dying on hills that are not probably in battles they can win. And even if they do win, even if the courts ultimately decide in their favor, they've spent a lot of time not talking about holding Donald Trump accountable and its administration accountable on these big casino issues that, again, matter more to the real lives of real people. Trump has taken on 10 times the number of fights voluntarily. They're not fights that came his way. It's not like a spy plane crashed and he has to decide what he's doing to do about it. He's picked fights with law firms, with Harvard, with all these different places. 10 times more. Normal White House, they'd bring in a management consultant and they'd say, you're picking too many fights. Your bandwidth isn't big enough. For him, it's a classic Trump jiu-jitsu. It's the more fights he picks, he believes the stronger he gets rather than the more distracted.
So you say the not big casino list includes but is not limited to the Abrego Garcia deportation fight, the Harvard situation, as you've made reference, the White House press pool fight. So then what's in the big casino bucket? Mark Halpern says reconciliation, the macro results of Doge rather than the day-to-day slivers, Ukraine, Iran, the Middle East, and of course the tariff war. So what's the interconnectedness here? In other words, does the outcome of the not big casino battles then impact how well he does with the broader, more significant issues?
Well, if he lost them all, either legally or politically, I think it'd be a problem for him, but I don't think he's going to. I think most of these things will eventually be resolved by the courts, some in his favor and some against him. But the problem, as I says, for the Democrats is these are important fights to a lot of people in the Democratic Party and a lot of people in the media. They think it is a hill to die on, whether the Associated Press continues to be allowed to cover the White House the way they have for decades. They think it's a hill to die on about whether Harvard can continue to have the anti-Semitism policies it wants to have. A hill to die on to defend the due process rights of someone who came to this country illegally and may or may not have been a gang member. And the White House view is these are sucker situations that the Democrats are wasting their breath fighting on the wrong side of public opinion, and that even if Trump somehow loses some of these fights, he's gained by having them so distracted and divided over how to address these many, many issues that the many, many fights that he's picking.
By illustration, I would say Chris Van Hollen, if in fact he gets on a plane today and goes to El Salvador, trying to argue for returning the quote unquote Maryland man. I mean, if there's yet another of those visuals in the cell in front of which we saw Kristi Noem standing right in that photo op, I think most Americans bristle when they see all those tattoos and they say, geez, I'm glad they're there and not here.
Yeah. And again, there's still to a frustrating degree. There are disputes about the facts of the case. There's no dispute that he came to the country legally. And for a lot of people, after the several years of the Biden policy, if the president wants to start sending people who came to the country illegally home, regardless of due process and regardless of facts of how they've conducted themselves in the United States, for tens of millions of people, that's fine. For tens of millions more, it's not. And AOC and other Democrats, Chris Van Hollen, as you said, are speaking out passionately, saying that this cannot stand, that this is a government run amok. But the White House is just as Democrats, in many cases, not all, are very comfortable having this fight. The White House is politically very comfortable having this fight. And from their point of view, the worst thing that can happen is that they can lose in the courts, and then they'll add to their list of boogeymen, along with Harvard and the Associated Press and big law, will be judges.
You could get more of Mark Halpern in his Wide World of News daily newsletter and via Two-Way, which are the video conversations, of which there are many each day, and they are worthy. And they have good guests in addition to Mark's commentary. I don't tweet enough. I never remember to use X, to use formerly Twitter. But I tweeted this morning, and I kind of like what I summed up. Here's what I said, Mark. 3 stories dominate the news today. In each, Donald Trump is wrong on the merits, in my opinion, but benefiting politically. 1, defunding Harvard. 2, not facilitating the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. 3, reducing the IRS workforce by 40%. Wrong, wrong, and wrong. Cheers, applause, USA, USA. Your reaction?
Bill Clinton, one of the smartest things I ever heard him say was it's better to be strong and wrong than right and weak. And not just because he's the president with the bully pulpit, but the style in which he and his team are going after those issues puts him in a position of strength. Now, I believe that politics shouldn't matter as much as substance. And in each of those cases, everyone should hope that the government policy is making the world a better place, right? That's the idea of politics and government, not for fun or power. I'm not sure I agree with you as black and white as you stated it, that he's wrong on all three of those issues. And I think there's tens of millions of people who think he's right on all those issues and tens of millions who think he's wrong. But I don't think there's any doubt, as you said in your tweet, that the position of strength, activity, movement, and authenticity on all those issues, it works to his political benefit. At a minimum, it unites the red side of America. And so they're going to be more united with him to work on the reconciliation, to support him if he makes a major move with Iran, for instance. Because unfortunately, in our polarized country, the best way to rev up one of our two major tribes, red or blue, is to get the other tribe revved up. Because the minute the blues get revved up saying, how dare you attack Harvard? The reds, even if they're having disagreements with Donald Trump on some other matter at the moment, will say, well, if the blues are upset, if AOC really feels strongly about this, we need to rally around Donald Trump for 180 degrees of what AOC wants.
The blues would be better. No disrespect to your sheepskin, which I know you've earned, like TC's. But the blues would be better served if it were a state university that they were fighting with. Because apart from how do you say it, L'Oreal Plaza, those that you write about with such regularity, apart from those who attend your fictitious brunch, who else is going to defend Harvard in all of this?
Well, hired guns. They've hired both lawyers and a PR firm, public affairs firm, that are close to the Republican Party and to this White House. I'm curious, which aspect of what he's doing about Harvard do you think is not right?
I think that Harvard has some First Amendment rights issues here, collectively or through some of the personalities. I have the same view that I had. You'll remember, of course, when the three university presidents went to Capitol Hill, and I came on air and I said, I get what they were saying. I understand the complexity of the First Amendment issues. There are, yet there aren't, when you're talking about a private institution and trying to provide guardrails for protest. But they were eggheads, and they were tone deaf relative to public sentiment. They should have slammed the desk, and they should have condemned Hamas as the first thing that they did, and then moved on to say, but we're trying to provide a forum here where all perspectives are heard. I just think it's much more nuanced than it's led to believe by Trump going after, the wacky liberals at Harvard.
Right. Well, I understand what you're saying. And what I'd say in response, and it's not a perfect parallel, so no reason to jump on me when I leave and Michael starts to take calls about this. But for years, presidents and Congresses of both parties from Washington have told universities, if you want public money, you have to do certain things. Most of those things were more liberal. If you want public money, you have to have enforce Title IX. If you want public money, you have to have DEI policies. And I didn't hear people saying that was somehow crossing some constitutional line about speech or about the private conduct of a private university. They're welcome to turn down the money, as some schools do. If they want the money, president won the election. He's saying, this is what you need to do for the money. And if they don't want to do what he says, they can just say, we won't take the money.
Will you say something about what I perceive as the larger picture narrative of Trump stifling debate, not just in academia, but also in the media, thinking of the litigation with ABC, CBS apparently going to fold its tent. And then, of course, what's going on with the law firms, because it sure does. It's funny. I don't give him perhaps enough credit for the thought and the planning that must have gone into this approach, because I think it's all deliberate and concerted.
And there's more coming. And I think institutions and individuals who have the courage of their convictions should stand up and say, we're not going to allow the president to have his way. Some law firms have done that. If you are afraid of the president's power, if you think your business will be destroyed if you don't go along with what the president wants, you got a choice to make. But if you're in the business of being in the national town square, have the courage of your convictions and stand up and say, again, as some have, as Harvard's doing now, as some law firms have done, as some news organizations have done, and just say, we're gonna do what we think is right.
I didn't see this coming, this part of Trump 2.0. A final question for Mark Halpern. Did you, I mean, with all the talk of Project 2025, et cetera, did you ever think that he would be as aggressive as he has been in going after his detractors?
Anyone who tells you that they saw this was going to happen, you need to call a liar to their face.
Okay, good. Well, I'm in good company then with you. I'm in good company in not having done so. Two-way conversations, wide world of news here on Wednesdays in the second hour of the program. Anything else that I need to mention for Mark Halpern?
Coming up in 2 weeks, my twice weekly podcast, with video podcast on the Megyn Kelly Network debuts, but we can talk about that more as we get closer.
We will do that. Mark, thank you for being here. I appreciate your contribution as always.
Thank you. Great to see you, Michael. Thank you.